Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick, and welcome to Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening Woman. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. Who is the awakening woman? She's the woman who's seeking a greater possibility in her reality and looking for solutions. She knows being awakened is not a lofty ideal but a necessity. If she can transform herself, she can change the world. Her conversations will introduce you to talented women who will speak to your spirituality, your sensuality, and your soul. They share their stories and explain how they are in service to the world. So let their words in these conversations embolden and inspire you. It's been nearly 2 weeks now since I've come back from being in Mallorca and the Rama festival there, and also the day that I spent doing the Immense Grace Accelerator. And even before I got there, I had been feeling, or I didn't even realise how much I had been feeling tense and defensive about certain things that were happening in my private situation that I don't really need to go into right now, but and that tightness and that defense that I had built up in my physical body, to an extent I was aware of it, and also I was finding it's not very easy to find space and privacy to do practice in the way that I wanted to, just because of the way that things are set up for me at the moment. So I was feeling a real lack of that. So when I could, and every day pretty much, I would be out walking, finding a space in nature and using that to be my practice and to be my meditation in it, and it helped. But what I was really missing was just being in a space of total relaxation, and also being able to communicate to other people who were in the same situation as me, or understanding why we need spiritual community and why we need a spiritual practice and why it's so important. And I really got to experience higher energetic resonance more than I really think I had even experienced before, by contrast, and also by understanding what it really meant on an even higher level. And I've spoken before about my answer to that question is always when I'm in a space of creativity and that flow, and just allowing my ideas to then crystallize into action that I need to take, and then seeing it turn up in some tangible form, be it a song or be it some writing, be it the podcast even. All of those are manifestations of my ideas, and the process of bringing that through out into the world is my total happy place. This experience that I had during those few days was higher energetic resonance on a level of what was possible for me that I probably couldn't even imagine in an experiential form. So, for instance, we all sit and we all dream about things that we want to do, places that we would want to experience, and the person that we think we will be, and what that experience will bring to us emotionally when we get there, and it's always this thing in the future that when I'm doing this and I've got that and all of these ducks are in a row, I'm going to be in this amazing place. And it's always this thing in the future, and you can never really truly understand what it is that you're going to be. It's just an idea that you have. And my case in point is the podcast. And since I've been back, I've been working on the files from Mallorca, and there's just a little tweak that I need to make, which is why there's been a little gap in the audio uploads on Spotify and iTunes and that. But I'm working on it. I have all the files. It's going to be there. But that was a little bit frustrating also. But coming away from that, because that's not really where the point is. The point that I want to make was, over the almost 2 years that I've been doing the podcast, I never really envisaged what it would make of me. I never really thought that it would change me so much. And I recorded an episode a couple of days ago with Sydney of Seek the Joy podcast. I hope I've got that title right, Sydney. Forgive me if I don't. But and we talked, a lot about what the practicalities of making a podcast and all the things that go on behind the scenes to create that. But if I think back to when I first released the first one, and when I was putting everything together, and I remember the first time that I actually recorded my intro. So hello, my name is Carol May Whittick. Welcome to Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening Woman. But it was the beginning of actually saying my name. And of course, I've lived with my name for all of my life, and for most of my life, I've said my name and introduced myself to my name, and been very attached to that name. And I remember at the beginning saying my name into the microphone with nobody else around me, and just feeling It was a lot. It was a big stretch for me to actually even just say my name down into the microphone with nobody else around me. And I'm going through some thoughts about my name right now. I'm feeling something about it needs to shift. Something about it needs to change energetically for many different reasons. And that's not really what the point that I'm making is about. But in saying that name so many times that I've recorded episodes and re-recorded that intro every single time, I've found that I'm able to really just fall into that, because over the course of these couple of years, I've found a different part of myself that I didn't even knew was available or needed to be developed, a part of me that has an even more deeper curiosity than I even believed that I had, has an even more deeper compassion for anybody's story, for their journey, for their vision. And the bigger the vision that somebody has, I'm all for it. I want it to be like mind-blowingly unrealistic, quote unquote. I hate that word. Hate's a strong word, but sometimes it goes like that. I just think for those who don't want to push themselves to something unrealistic, it's not really your place to then chip away at anybody who has got a glimmer of an idea of something that they don't even know how they can make happen. You have to allow people to have something impractical and unrealistic. And being in Mallorca in that space, it pushed me out of my comfort zone. I got pulled up completely unprepared to in the spontaneous poetry that Guru Jagat was doing on the first evening, on the Friday evening, and I'd only just popped into Rama to pick a friend up because we were going to go to eat, and I got called up to stage. So that was like totally unexpected, and I have to admit that was not spontaneous because I recited one of the lyrics to one of my songs, even though I forgot some of the words. But it was spontaneous in that I wasn't sitting in the room considering whether I was going to stand up and be part of it. Another thought as well was when I was on the panel and talking about the healing gender constructs, or kind of talking through the subject with all of the other panelists, and again with Guru Jagat, and that again was a real step out of my comfort zone. I think, yes, I've done one panel previously, so twice in, I'm a veteran, but what I experienced over those few days really was a necessary thing to me, because if you've followed me for a little while or heard my podcast or see, you know that I came from Bali. I was in Bali for a few months, and I've not really spoken greatly about that, and I'm still really processing what went down there, but it was beautiful. And then I got confronted with a lot of things that I'm still working through, and as a result of it not kind of finishing off in the way that I wanted it to, I needed to kind of really take a number of steps back. And one of those steps back included having to reach out and ask for help and come back into the family unit. And that has been an enormous challenge. Anybody who has ever lived away from their family for any great length of time will know then to go back and spend any more than, the holidays is difficult enough. So then try and stretch that out to a couple of months, and you can imagine what's going on there as well. And because I have been the dreamer, idealistic one of the family, the unrealistic one comes up again, then to have a vision of going away and then for it to end so badly and then have to come back, I've had to really sit tight in my conviction and listen to almost perpetual criticism about how foolish my idea was around that, and then also how foolish my idea about her conversations and all the other ideas that I have and have been working on so hard to bring forward. And that has been really difficult, and that's where the contraction and the defensiveness came, because I'm not necessarily, unless totally pushed, and I've still not got to that point, but I turn in when I get attacked. So I will turn in and become quiet and turn in and become quiet, and I'd really compressed myself down. So by the time I was going out to Mallorca, I needed somewhere to expand again. I needed somewhere to just not have to be on the defensive at all. I was asked to come out there and do some recording of her conversations, and that I took that little grain of my idea had actually garnered me an invitation to be part of somebody else's creative idea. So I had to go with that because I didn't know how it was going to turn out, but it wasn't so much that, it's like it got me there. It got me to be part of that, and that in itself was important to me, and also because it came from somebody and a company who I respect, and for so much, because of the work that they do, and also because of the way that they are creative. Guru Jagat is this amazing creatrix of creating Rama, the record company, the clothing line that she has, and also the programming that has come as a result of her curating the teachings of Yogi Bhajan. So that has been really important for me. The one of the things that I really appreciated, and I've only had very few experiences of practicing Kundalini yoga in a group setting. It's just been my choice that way as well. But was to then spend the whole of the Thursday, which was like 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. of just really deep practice, meditation, teaching, just being around other women who are in the Immense Grace program, and it gave me the opportunity to just slough off this kind of defensiveness and this trying to dodge the bullets of other people's judgment about what I was doing in the life that I am creating for myself, because it's so different from anywhere else. And I know a lot of people can resonate with this. And it was also important for me to spend days in the company of women who I've only, maybe one or two of them, I've met them in real life before, but have spent maybe 2 or 3 years just connecting with them online. And it's been great, but it was even greater to eat and walk down the street with them and talk with them and hug them and practice with them. That was really, really important. And it made me realize how important a spiritual practice is. And sometimes I think you don't appreciate something until you've had it and lost it, or had it and not used it, or are going through a really tight time, and you can then notice the importance of meditation, of mantra, of just breathing, of just being around people who will just give you space to be or do or say nothing without judgment, to be around the environment of such creativity, such vision. I also was lucky enough to do 2 classes with Tate as well. And again, she's someone that I've seen online and done classes of hers online, but then to be in the room, and the studio was packed. It was like half mat at best, and it was 33, 34 degrees pretty much. The weather was just beautiful, fantastic. So you can imagine, like, everyone's just, skin to skin and like knee to toe, and so close, but so focused on really making something of these practices, and having her speak so knowledgeably and so passionately about what is possible when you put yourself in a space where you actually appreciate the gift that we have when we do have a spiritual practice of some sort. And mine is Kundalini yoga, and to be there and to have someone just remind me of how lucky I am to have these tools that can make a difference to my state and pull me out of the funk that I was slipping into, and to have something that would coat me in a protection of just reminding me that I can handle the world as it is. I can handle what's coming at me because I have this tool, I have this technology. There were so many standout moments for me at the festival. One of the so many standout moments, but just to kind of testify to the power of mantra and energy. One of the things I remember is I was sitting with a friend in the plaza, and it was a class that Tej was taking, and we were just doing a meditation. It was a Adi Shakti, and boiling hot day, we're outside and everyone's practicing and it's beautiful, and a guy walks past, and he's probably like early 40s. He's got a plastic bag, it's got like a couple of cans of beer in it, and then he's carrying one of those massive like 5-litre plastic bottles of water, and he kind of like trips around a little bit and he finds a wall and sits on the edge. And one of the things that was beautiful to see was when all the classes were happening in the plaza, how many of just the local residents would just come and kind of sit at the back and like watch what was happening with all these people dressed in white doing all this stuff in the hot sun, you know, when most sensible people would be having a siesta. It's like, what are you doing? But there we were. And he came and sat down at the back wall, and, you know, me and my friend just like looked at each other and looked at him, and in no time these two cans of beer they'd been gone. And then we entered into a meditation, and what we then noticed is when we came out of it and then Tej was like speaking again, is that he was still muttering the mantra Adi Shakti, you know, in his way. And we just kind of, you know, I said to her, do you know what, if the energy was not right for him to not be here and sit there and just kind of like get into the mantra, he wouldn't be here. You know what it's like, you know, whether you're out of it or not. If you're in a situation or an energetic space that is going to repel you or is not for you, you're not going to stay around. And some deep part of him was appreciating the fact that that energy field had been created and was responding to it. So that was another one of my main standout moments there as well. One of the things, and I wrote some notes actually to make sure that I covered the points that I wanted to cover when I was making this recording, is I put experiencing utopia. And I've had someone say to me recently that the idea of utopia is ridiculous because, you know, the human beings need contrast in order to have an experience of a relative experience of good or bad. And I believe that person has a point. But I beg to differ. I think, you know, we are at the moment having a relative experience, believing that we're cut off from spirit, forgetting how powerful we are, is that. And as we start to come into a space of feeling connected to one another, connected to the elements, in control of what can happen in our lives, there needs to be a few decades, few millennia of experiencing what that can be like. And I think that we'd still have a contrast even though we'd be living in this heightened state. I'm for it. I'm ready to try it. You know, if it gets to the point that everything's so samey because it's so great, then I'm sure we will evolve into a situation where we'll decide that that's not cool anymore. But look at where we're going in the world. There's so much change. There's so much the blurring of lines, and you know, this is something that was spoken about on the panel where the panel that I sat on. And one of the points that I brought up on the panel was that, as someone who I believe that I'm a relatively open-minded person, you know, I then still do appreciate that varying views that I have about certain things are very antiquated and still quite narrow, and particularly when it comes to something as cut and dried as we have been led to believe as gender, where it's you are male or you're a female. And then to have conversations with Benjamin in particular. I was speaking to him afterwards, and I was saying again, you know, just there are over 60 now genders, if you want to put it that, if you want to call it that, but it's, for me, is what would me kind of blurring out the confines of what I believe it is to be female, or what I have been led and conditioned to believe represents my gender. It's like, where do the lines blur out? I believe I'm going through a very quote unquote feminine stage right now, with, you know, just kind of having like hair and wearing more dresses, and I really kind of felt that I stepped into a real kind of feminine space when I was out there as well. And it's in contrast to, especially during my 20s, I spent pretty much all of my 20s shaving my head and adopting a very, it was kind of androgynous, but it wasn't as stark, perhaps, as somebody like maybe Grace Jones would take it. It still had its softness, but, you know, with no hair, you get popped into a box. And for me, also, there were many reasons why I chose to keep my hair very short. Sometimes it was very defensive, sometimes it was very protective, because I knew it would actually give me some space away from the way that I felt as a female. And I had a lot of anxiety around what that meant, because it had got me into situations where I wasn't able to control what was happening, and then I felt that I just needed to be separated. Sometimes, most of the time, you know, that doesn't really work for you in terms of being a benefit to you anyway. But having stepped into a more feminine type of space now, but then remembering what it was to have that androgyny, and then leaning into all the things that I think represent what make a female, in the old sense of the term, into whatever it would be if I just decided that none of those edges were there. And every time that I come up against an edge, to then question, have I decided that there's a wall here, and I can't step through that because this is not what I do, or this is not what I think. So that's another idea that I took away from being out during the festival and taking part in all of the things that I took part in, was to question where I have very standard thoughts and very narrow thoughts, that if I remove them, what does that mean? It made me also think of, well, what does that mean for her conversations as well? It's like, obviously, higher energetic resonance can be either way, you know, and I do intend to have men on her conversations very, very soon. Tools for the Awakening Woman. What's woman? What does that mean? Will I need to change my tagline? It made me like just look at the way that I had made things in my life, and if I was going to change them, and, you know, my also motives for changing them as well, not to just change them for the sake of, well, it just seems a little bit, 2019. There'd be more of a reason, like a real deep, integrous reason for me to do that. How practice becomes real life. I'm looking at my notes again, and when I was thinking about this, as I said, I've experienced periods very recently where I've felt that I've had to very much be on the defense of everything that I'm doing in my life. Especially when you make a move and it doesn't turn out the way that it needs to, and you need to take like 10 steps back, and it's very easy / enjoyable for others to look at what you're doing and you have to stand by your guns and your decisions, and really know that, okay, this didn't turn out the way that I thought. I'm here and I'm experiencing so much that is reminding me of how my practice has turned into real life. And when I was writing that point down, it reminded me of the practice that I had to do when I was learning an instrument, and that was when I was doing voice, and when I was learning to play the piano. And it's something that any musician worth their salt, i.e. not me at the moment, will do consistently every day. You don't always necessarily start with working on the piece that you're working on. Sometimes you go back to basis and you work on your technique. And a lot of the time the technique is tedious, and the technique can look stupid even, especially when you're doing vocal exercises. You're making faces, you're doing crazy sounds, you're holding your breath, and all of this sounds very much like yoga, right? When you're learning to play the piano, you do scales and you're running your fingers up and down the keys, and you start very slow, and you make sure that the position that you're sitting at and you're holding your hands are at a particular position, and then you turn and you use these fingers, this amount of fingers, and you turn 3 fingers or 4 fingers, or your thumb goes over. You do that slowly, and then you keep doing it, you keep doing it, and you keep doing it until you can't get it wrong. And a lot of the time, people practice till they get it right, but that's not enough. When you practice, this is what I was told, and this is what I used to strive for when I was being good, is you practice until you can't get it wrong. You practice until you can't, you mistakes just are ironed out completely. And that just kind of correlates with any kind of practice, your meditation, your mantra, your yoga, or whatever your practice might be. We practice and we keep practicing until we can't get it wrong. And we'll usually run out of life before we get to the point where we can't get it wrong. But the thing about really drilling in a technique is you work the technique, you work the technique till the point that it becomes part of the way that you do things. If you see a ballet dancer, even the way that they walk down the road and they carry themselves is that much more. There's so much more to their poise and their stature and their movement than someone who does nothing or just lies on a sofa all day long. The practice just emanates through them, and that's another thing that I really got from being around the people who are deep practitioners. It's your practice emanates from you. You may not know what it is. It may not be as obvious as someone being a trained dancer, but there's something that will emanate from you people will be able to see that you have a practice of something, and you have a stature that is completely different from somebody who has none. Even if you're not able to identify what it is that people do. And there was just a grace and a level of, it did feel like being in another dimension, but it was tangible. It was something that I lived for on a few days of getting up and getting a drink and going to practice, and then speaking to people and just knowing who it remained with me on such a deep and profound level. It just gave me more conviction to continue to do what I do. It gave me a heightened It gave me more conviction to actually dig in deeper and make sure that I'm doing something every day. It made me see that all of those years of me just picking little bits and just thinking that I'm not getting anywhere, I realised that all of that is nonsense. Of the times that I thought it's like, is this working? It's like, it does, because even though I might be at this state in time in a place where I'm thinking I'm not 100% cool with what's going on, I have a practice that is giving me all the tools. I am able to see that this happens for a reason, and the reason is clear, even though I can't 100% always appreciate it on a day-to-day basis. You know, it's felt like going back into a space that's 10 years, 15 years previous to what's actually happening in the world at large now. And when you're sitting in an environment where people don't see anything other than what they're seeing around them, and you've seen so much, but you know that you can't really go into it because it makes no sense. It does, as Tasha had pointed out, make you appreciate how absolutely lucky you are. And as much as I groan and gripe and about certain things that are happening, and certain things that are happening are not okay actually, but it has highlighted areas of unhealed wounds, traumas that I didn't even realise were part of my story, and then having to come face to face with that and absorb that and look at that and go, okay, this has been going on for so long and I wasn't even aware of it. But what the practice has given me is the ability to then not go into overwhelm. It has been overwhelming, but I've been able to not go into as deep a darker place that I believe I would go had I have not had that. And sometimes it's a simple thing of being able to allow whatever is coming at me from the external by way of judgment and words and attack, by just being able to allow it to roll around me and sitting it and breathe, and like I said, sometimes contract and maybe too much. But it's been a great experience. It's been a great experience to go out there and speak to so many different men and women from all over the world. It's been great also to then go and experience another spot in the world as well. You know, travel is my absolute passion. And it's also been really unforgettable for me to meet with people that I barely get to see in real life, but see them in real life, see them in action, talk to them, and then also get a glimpse and a tangible taste of a possibility and a new possibility for myself that actually isn't so far away from me. It gave me much more than I thought it could do. And I'm just looking at my notes here, and I've just got one more thing to say, and it's opening up and facing demons and darkness. What are you ending? And there's a definite cycle of completion happening in my life now, and I'm being inspired to shift so in a way that I'm wondering if I have the courage to do, but I think I will. It's just because it's so new, and it's been like, really, what am I going to do that? That I've just had to kind of come back and just take a moment to go, am I going to do that? But I want to keep it under my hat for a moment. I've mentioned it to a couple of people, but I'm not going to put it over the podcast just yet. It will be apparent. It will be very apparent when it happens. But I just wanted to feed back to you about how a festival like that, what it really does. I'm not really a big festival goer, so I've been to a few, but I've never really done anything that's been a day-on-day experience like that. But if ever you see the adverts out for Rama Festival, I would, get there. It's definitely worth it, and as I've been told, it's growing, as things like this only would do. The Mallorca is beautiful. I didn't even spend enough time there. So it's just a plane ride away from me, and living in the UK, it's actually cheaper for me to go to Mallorca than it is to get a train across the country. Such is, I don't know who comes up with these things, but it works that way anyway. But yeah, that's a feedback from me, another solo episode. I think I'm going to do more of these, but I want to make sure that I'm actually talking about something of deep relevance and experience, and not just spewing away down the microphone. So yes, this is going to come out. Look out for more interviews from Rama. I spoke to Joanna Pitt. That is on YouTube presently. I'm just working out why the audio doesn't want to come out of a mobile phone without sounding garbled, but I've actually worked out why, and I'm almost at the solution to making sure it doesn't sound so terrible if you listen on any other device than a laptop. And I've also got a fair few other interviews as well from women and other people in and around the Rama Festival. So I'll be putting all of that together as well. And that's this episode. I just want to say thank you to all the people that I met there, all of the crew from Rama, Guru Jagat, for inviting me to be over and be on the panel. It has made a deep impression on me in terms of how I need to step up, and things that I just need to move through and expand into. It's been enormously life-changing. So thank you again for listening, and until the next one, take care.